Okay, let's talk about zeros of polynomial functions. So a polynomial equation is an equation that contains a polynomial expression. So let's talk about the difference between an equation and an expression. So an expression has no equal sign. And on this one, we just simplify it. For an equation, it has an equal sign, and we solve it. Okay. Now, the degree of a polynomial equation is the highest power on any one of the terms of the polynomial. So if we look here, our highest power is 3. So 3 is our degree. Now the leading coefficient is always the number in front of your exponent with the highest degree. Highest exponent. So if you don't have one, like there's not one that you can see, it's always an implied 1. So here, our leading coefficient is 1. Okay? Alright, let's work on this problem. So when we solve for an equation, we always want to get a polynomial in descending order, which means we have our powers in like stepping down. So we would go 3, 2, 1, 0, whatever like that. So we want it in descending order, and then it equals 0. So for it to equal 0, we're going to have to move the 60m squared over. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to have 9m cubed plus 100m equals 60m squared. So to move him over, we would subtract him, right, because he's a positive here. If we subtract him on this side, we also subtract him on the other. I'm going to move this up here so we have more space. So this is going to be 9m cubed minus 60m squared plus 100m equals 0. Okay, so now we have 3, 2, 1. That's descending, so we're happy. Now we have to ask ourselves, what is the greatest common factor between these three? Well, if we look, they each have an m, so we could factor our m out. So if we take m from 9m cubed, that's going to be 9m squared. Right? We take m from 60m squared, it's going to be 60m. And if we take m from 100m, well, that's going to leave us plus 100. All that equals 0. Right. So now we can do our AC method, right? We take 9 times 100, that gives us 900. We want factors of 900 that are going to add same sign to give us negative 60. So that's going to be 30 and 30. They both get the same sign, so they'll both get negative. The greatest common factor here, I'm going to have to write really small. So now we're going to have m. That should be a bracket, sorry. Then there's a parenthesis. 3m. If we pull out 3m out of these two, that's going to leave us 3m minus 10. That's not a 10, I wasn't looking where I was writing. And then we can pull out a negative 10 out of these two. And that's going to leave us 3m minus 10. All that equals 0, right? Now we know from before that what's on the outside, 3m minus 10, and then 3m. Oops. Minus 10. Both of those equal 0. So I'm going to skip this. So I'm going to have m, right? And then these are 3m minus 10 squared equals 0. So So these are our two factors, and we can now set them each equal to 0 and solve. And then this one's already solved all the way, right? Because it says to solve, so that one's solved. Now we could add 10 to both sides. These cancel, so 3m equals 10. Now we'll divide on both sides by 3, and m equals 10/3. So this would be our second solution, which they just did it twice because it was squared, but technically you only have to do it once because that's called multiplicity, okay? So m equals 0 and 10/3, which is what they got. And then you would check your answers by plugging them back in, okay? But like they said, we'll leave that to you. You just take this and plug it back in where your m's are. I would do that in this one. I'm going to put a star by him. And then if they equal 0, then you know they're right. Okay, so I'm going to leave those for you guys. Here we're going to factor. This time we're going to use our grouping like we did before. We have 4 terms, so that's how we know to use grouping. If you'll remember, you group the first 2 together, and then the last 2 together. Always include the negative if there is one, and then write your little plus sign up here. So our greatest common factor out of these two is x squared, right? Always pick the smaller of the exponents. So x squared from x cubed is x minus 1, right? If we take x squared from x squared, that's always minus 1. Now what is our greatest common factor here? Well, that would be negative 4. That would leave us x minus 1. What's on the outside becomes one term. Factor is what I meant to say. And then what is, if these are alike, they automatically become another factor. And then you just solve. So you have x squared minus 4 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. Okay? We add this 4 over. So then we have x squared equals 4. To get rid of a square, we always take the square root, right? Because the square and the square root cancel. But what you do on one side, you must do on the other, so we have to take the square root of 4. He is an even root, so we have to remember our plus minus. So then x equals plus minus, what is the square root of 4? I hope everyone said 2, because you would be correct. So here, x equals negative 2, positive 2. Now let's solve this one. Let's add 1 to both sides. So x equals 1. So we could add 1 to our list here, and we would be complete, okay? So now it says try it. Check the work in this example. Check the work in the above example using a graph. So let's graph these numbers, okay? But we also want to take time to stop and look at our end behavior of this graph. And we know that our highest degree is x cubed, so our end behavior of x cubed. This guy is odd, and our coefficient, which is 1, is positive. Right? So this side's going to be down, and this side's going to be up. So let's see what we have. We have a negative 2, a 2, well, and then a 1, which would be halfway to 2. So it's very little. But we're going to do this. We know the left side. Let me change colors so we can have a different color for our line. Left side is going to start down. Each one of these came from a multiplicity of 1, so we're going to cross at each one of these, right? Each one crosses from our multiplicity. So we're going to come up, then back down, and then back up. So that is what our function will look like. Okay? Alright, I think I'm going to leave the rest of them for you guys. It asks what are the intercepts. Well, our intercepts would be our x's, right? So it would be, ooh, my goodness, that was a crazy jump. Move up some. Our intercepts would be, well, negative 2, 1, and 2. Now I'll let you guys answer the rest. Okay, you should be able to make those connections, I hope. And then I'll let you work. Practice is perfect. And then I will post the answers after you submit your homework. Okay? Have a great day.